Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and yeah, we're going to start covering some lore stuff for Warhammer the Old World, as there's a bunch of context that we can get now for various different races, even those that haven't released just yet. Grand Cathay has a 2-page entry here, which obviously makes sense as Grand Cathay was confirmed for Warhammer the Old World. It's just going to be a while until we get to see them. However, I wasn't expecting them to be in the core rulebook, so it might actually be sooner than expected. This is actually kind of cool. But yeah, so there's 2 pages. We're going to read over it. It's not a lot of lore. However, I want to discuss it because it's good context for us, as it does kind of hint towards the maybe possible future. And then there's also some other things, like if you're a Total War fan and you're kind of curious about Grand Cathay, this is something that is good for you to know. There's a lot, and I mean a lot of lore that we're going to be talking about over the next few days. Today's just going to be 2 videos, but yeah, there's going to be a lot coming. Now, before anything, you might remember this art. This is the loading screen for Total War Warhammer 3, one of the ones that you'll see for Grand Cathay. Interestingly enough, that's the header for this page. It's really, really curious. I guess there were a few rumors going around, some faint ones, that a lot of cross-promotion is going to happen, and also that maybe some GW artists also did work on that. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. Maybe it just doesn't mean anything at all, but it's just something nice to point out. So we got a small entry here, which is just basically an introduction. Far to the east of the Old World lies the vast empire of Grand Cathay, stretching from the Warpstone Desert in the west to the Far Sea in the east, from the hinterlands of Koresh to the south to the Great Steppes of the north. The empire of Grand Cathay has endured and prospered for longer than any other human civilization. This makes them the longest standing one, obviously, but like not the oldest human civilization. It's just the only active one. So we're going to read section by section. It's only just a few small paragraphs, but I feel like this is going to be good context for anyone. So, Grand Cathay. Cathay is a land of wonders, with islands that hang in the sky, airships that glide across azure heavens, and living statues that stand sentinel over its borders and fortress gates. Cathay predates almost all human civilizations and is by far the most populous human nation in the world. Its provinces, great cities, and fortresses spanning thousands of miles of forests, mountains, plains, and deserts. So this is early context that we've already known. So yeah, they're not the first, they're just one of the first. I'm imagining that Nehekara still remains as the first. I haven't read through their entry just yet. But this is where things get a little bit more curious. Despite its geographical size and economic strength, and in spite of the vast armies and war engines it can muster, the Cathayan Empire is surrounded by enemies and beset by rebellion and strife. To the south, the powerful kingdoms of Ind and the fearsome snake men of Koresh threaten its borders, while to the east, elven pirates, Nipponese invaders, and ancient kingdoms from beneath the Jade Sea assail its port cities and coastal towns. In the west, ogres, hobgoblins, and the horrors of the Warpstone Desert cast a shadow over its lands, though by far the greatest danger to Cathay comes from the north and the inexhaustible armies of chaos. So, a few things to point out here which I think is kind of important. Obviously, Ind, Koresh, and Nippon still exist, and it's good to see them remain in canon. I've always had this speculation that maybe in the future, if things go really well, they'll have to do something. It would be cool to see some miniatures, honestly, or even just some basic lore, because, well, Grand Cathay is going to be a part of the Old World. We've seen an Old World map right now, and yeah, we've not really seen, well, the map, other than, I think, just a small portion of Grand Cathay, the northern portion. A little emphasis on the hobgoblins too, which is always good, because the hobgoblin corner is a thing. We've seen some logos in the old maps that Games Workshop have shown us for the Old World, but nothing really, you know, concrete about it. How big are they? Where does their empire span to? It's also a nice little throwback to the Fishmen, which is something that has always been quite a meme in Warhammer Fantasy. Every now and then it gets hinted across. There's also a little bit of a hint every now and then in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay since Cubicle 7 took over. So yeah, I mean, there are enemies. Cathay is not a safe place. And the whole thing about rebellion and strife could be pointed towards the Monkey King, which we'll talk about in a little bit time here, and obviously the Jade-Blooded Vampires, which we know are active. Hopefully we get some nice lore about them. I really want to know more about this really unknown vampire bloodline, which, yeah, I think they've only had like 6-7 lines in recent lore. And even then, that was through Total War Warhammer. So yeah, let's move on to the next section. Alright, let's read over the Dragon Emperor. Long before the coming of the Old Ones, the Celestial Dragon ruled the East. In time, humans populated his land and came to revere him for his power and wisdom. When chaos flooded the world, the Celestial Dragon brought together and protected the tribes of the East. In thanks, the humans took the dragon as their emperor and served him with loyal admiration. At the birth of Cathay, the Celestial Dragon took a mate, the Moon Empress, and with her had 9 draconic children to rule the land, watched over by their father and mother from the capital of Wei-Jin. Okay, so the Moon Empress was not always there, which kind of leads to some theories, because some people think that she was actually birthed by more sleep, which is entirely possible. I mean, it kind of leads to the whole thing of yin and yang, order and chaos, birthing a more neutral entity. But, I mean, we're going to have to wait and see. Let's go into the next paragraph. Through long years of stability and patience, though its enemies are many and its leaders not always in agreement, the dragons have brought harmony to Cathay. The dragons teach the philosophy of yang and yin, of balance in all things. This goes so far as the Emperor and Empress themselves, the Celestial Dragon representing the embodiment of yang, the power of light, heaven and fire, while the Moon Empress personifies yin, the power of shadow, spirits and night. Together, they are 2 halves of one whole, just as Grand Cathay endures through a perfect balance of all things. Once again, this is something that we've already kind of known due to the release of Total War Warhammer 3 and various infodumps that have been provided, but it's good to see what this is leading towards. Obviously, there is a few more paragraphs that we're going to be talking about which go into a little bit more detail, and I'm really curious. This is when we're going to start jumping into a lot of speculation. So this next section is called the Empty Throne, and this is where the big chunk of talking is probably going to happen. So in recent times, the great balance of Grand Cathay has been threatened, and it faces danger like at no other time in its long history. For over 2 centuries, the Celestial Dragon Emperor and the Moon Empress have been absent, leaving the running of the empire to their children. It is a time of darkness and disharmony for Cathay. Not even the draconic rulers of the empire seem to know where their father and mother have gone, or, more worryingly, if they will ever return. Before we jump into the next section, this is actually kind of curious, because I feel like there's a hint in Total War Warhammer. There is actually a 8-player multiplayer campaign called Darkness and Disharmony, so that could actually be a little bit of a hint for the future, where the demon factions actually invade Grand Cathay from within. Again, maybe very, very far future, but considering that even though the demons aren't going to be a core faction, they still appear in lore, you know, they can't just be ignored, it might be something of a little lore point. The next thing is obviously we have to look towards the artwork of Warhammer 3 being implemented here. Also, could be a coincidence, could be something a little bit more, especially with this rulebook having a lot of lore hints. But let's continue. Throughout the Empire, rebel lords and ambitious magistrates scheme to take power, while the countryside has become infested with bandit kings and criminals. In Wei-Jin, the Jade Dragon Yuan Bo struggles to hold his father's empire together and oversee the Celestial Court and its astronomer cabals with little help from his bickering siblings. In the east, Yin-yin, the sea dragon, looks out across the Jade Sea, her treasure fleets traveling east, south and west in search of gold and glory. Meanwhile, in the south, Li Dao, the fire dragon, guards the border against invasions from Ind and Koresh, all while keeping one eye on the mischievous Monkey King in the nearby Mountains of Heaven. In the west, Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, indulges himself, consumed by his own chemical research. So, a few important things, right? This is likely going to be a plot point where we're going to see the Monkey King take over Grand Cathay, if not for a few years, as I mean, it just kind of makes sense here. And I really much believe that we're going to see the Monkey King in Grand Cathay eventually. Maybe we won't even get an arcane journal for Grand Cathay. Maybe it will just be one fully fledged army book. Same thing with Kislev, as, well, they kind of missed the point with missing out on Forces of Fantasy and obviously the Ravening Hordes. What's really curious here is the lack of mention of the other dragons. I guess we do have the 4 lost dragon children. Don't worry about Miao Yin, also known as Miao Miao, as she's mentioned in the next section. But yeah, I guess even the Dragon of Hope is completely gone at this point? Mind you, we're still trying to search for wherever the hell she is in the Warhammer 3 map, because I don't know if they've abandoned that campaign plot point or whatever. But, yeah, I mean, it's kind of curious. I was expecting... Well, the Death Dragon I was expecting dead, right? But it's a 200-year plot point, and we know the names of a lot of the other dragons. Maybe they're just not relevant to this part of the story just yet. I'm still very much believing, and this is a little theory that I have, that Asavar Kul is going to do his usual invasion, because if you don't know, before he actually starts going down to Prague for the siege and so on, he does actually attack Grand Cathay. It's mentioned in like one sentence. So I've got a theory that he is actually going to kill one of the dragon children. Maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. Time will tell, but I'm kind of curious to see how everything goes. And the last section is the Great Bastion. In the north, Yin, the Storm Dragon, favoured daughter of her father, defends the Great Bastion that protects Grand Cathay from the open steppes and the chaos wastes beyond. A feat of almost unimaginable engineering, the Great Bastion climbs hundreds of feet above the landscape, its walls and towers bristling with cannon, archers, and legions of soldiers. Such is the might of the Great Bastion that it has never fallen, and only been breached a few times in its long history, often as the result of magic or cataclysmic seismic events. Unless you're playing a Zatan the Black in Warhammer 3 and just completely demolishing it with Dreadquake mortars. But yeah, I mean, it is one of these strong bastions that are very difficult to fall. Again, lore that we already know, but it's good to see that that is getting a plot point. It's likely that we're going to see some sort of lore in an eventual Cathay army book or Arcane Journal or whatever the hell they do. I'd love to know a little bit more about the dragons personally, getting to know more about their personality, as we did get that really lovely ebook for the Shadows of Change DLC, drama aside for Shadows of Change, but it did go into the personality a lot of Yuan Bo and Miao Yin, and it's really nice to know because these are new characters for us, right? It's always nice to know a little bit more about what's going on. But let's continue with the last paragraph. The secret of its strength comes from its construction. Thousands of years ago, when the people of the old world were little more than primitive warring tribes, the celestial dragon was fighting to preserve his domain from endless chaos invasions. He foresaw the destruction of his empire at the hands of the dark gods, and knew that, in time, even he would not be able to resist the rising tide of invaders. His solution was to gather his greatest engineers and levy thousands upon thousands of his subjects to raise a wall from the mountains in the west to the ocean in the east, a barrier to stand for all time. As the wall grew, the celestial dragon and his children poured their magic into it, and so it became more than merely a barrier of stone, wood, and steel, but one of will and determination. This is obviously lore that we already know, but it's obviously good to see this put in again. Even the Dragon Emperor knew that he could not withstand the forces of chaos, as they were getting stronger and stronger. With each passing Everchosen, chaos is obviously evolving, the chaos factions are getting stronger too, purely because, you know, even technology is helping them in certain cases. With the rise of the Dawi Zar, the Warriors of Chaos have been getting access to Hell Cannons, for example. More and more tribes have been falling towards the chaotic powers, which does mean that we're getting stronger spellcasters and, you know, just stronger warriors in general. I'm curious to see where this goes in the story point, because right now, the lore book, the main core rulebook, its first 90 pages goes into some brief descriptions on everyone. The Arcane Journals do not really give that much lore that we don't already know, but then again, these are races that, you know, Tomb Kings and Bretonnia we've known for a while. The most important thing that we've learnt about this, and I really do like, is that they've shown that even Cathay cannot hold back the tides of chaos. Ultimately, we know how the story ends with the end times, but it's the case of not making them super powered where they could always withstand stuff. It's really important that when new races and factions get implemented into the Warhammer setting, especially these ones that have always existed, but in a very minimal sense, then they need to feel like Warhammer, right? Honestly, I'm quite happy with the lore that's been presented here. I think that it's going to be quite interesting to see where things go. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. There's going to be loads of lore videos coming out, by the way. I really want to have a lot of lore. By now, all the faction-focused stuff should be done. So we'll be jumping into other topics, and there's so many cool things I want to talk about. Man, I'm having so much fun recording these videos. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.